Hey, what's up? This is Weasel. Looks like you are playing 2 tables of 10L on Party Poker Fast Forward. That's fine. So I'll just comment on the action. I've got a notepad here as well, so if anything interesting comes up, then I'm going to write it down. 3 is a cold call, look standard. Let's go back there a little bit, actually. Okay, so let's talk about the 3s. So we're on the button. Cut off open raises. We don't have too much info on him, apart from he does have a very big stack. But the effective stack's obviously 100 big blinds still. He open raises. We call, which is very standard. And he skips a c-bet out of position. So basically you want to be stabbing here, very aggressively. There's not really a good reason to be checking this flop. You have the flush draw, which is nice as well. I mean, it's not going to be a super great flush if it hits. But the important thing to keep in mind is you're going to have around 60% fold equity on the flop. So it's just going to be very plus EV to take a stab there, take your automatic profit, and you have the potential of spiking a heart as maybe a backup, or even a 3 as you spiked in this case. And now you can extract additional value. So I guess that's the first thing to write on our list. Missing bet versus miss c-bet. Okay. So standard folds on both tables. Pocket 2s is an open for MP. 3-4 offsuit is a fold on the button. 5-10 is probably going in the muck also. Ace-10 probably can play this somehow, depends on who opens really and the sizing they use. So yeah, pretty standard open with Ace-10 on the button. Min raising's fine. We've flopped a nut flush draw, so we should be c-betting here. It's pretty straightforward. And you should be firing the turn. You want to be betting like 60, 70. Okay, looks like you checked. I'm not sure what happened here. Let's just see. Why exactly did you check there? If that's indeed what happened. Yeah, so it looks like you're thinking about a bet here. You actually put a small sizing in, and then you snap check. Which doesn't make too much sense. I mean, let's have a look at the guy's stats. I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking at here. I guess it's the bottom line where it says FCB. I guess that's fold to flop c-bet. I guess T50 is fold to turn c-bet. So basically the guy does fold to turn c-bets. He's folding 50%. We don't have a big sample, admittedly, 352 hands, so there's no way of knowing this is accurate. But what we do know is that we do sometimes have some fold equity. He's shown a tendency to fold the turn before. Now we also have the nut flush draw, which is going to hit on the river around 20% of the time. Basically what this means is, if we bet around 60% of the pot, or let's say we bet 2/3 pot, it's only going to need to work about 40% of the time. When we factor in our equity, it now needs to work even less than this. It's now going to need to work maybe 22, 23% of the time. When we then factor in river implieds as well, because sometimes we bet, we hit, maybe we get a paired on the river. And this is not going to be a super big factor, because if we do hit, we're going to have a 1-card flush, which is not super easy to get paid off on, because our opponent can see pretty straightforward that there is 4 spades out there. But assuming we even make a small amount of implieds, we even need less folds on the turn. So basically you're in a spot where maybe you need like 18% folds on the turn. You've got a stat here that says he folds 50%, so there's no good reason not to barrel here. So pretty straightforward second barrel on the turn. I guess that's the second thing we can write on the list. So missing second barrel with nut flush draw. King 10 might be playable. You should probably 3-bet against a min raise. I mean, calling's okay actually as well. I would tend towards 3-betting a decent amount. He does fold 60% as well to 3-bet, so that's probably going to be the best play here, but calling's okay. This flop, probably check fold. Maybe if there's a club out there we could lead, but on the 9-high rainbow texture, I think we can probably just check fold, especially 3-way. Check calling would make no sense. Okay, I mean, I think you really need to think about what you're doing here with the King 10. I mean, you don't really... I mean, you've got some backdoor straights, that's true. You've got the backdoor straight with the 7-8. You've also got some backdoor straights with the Queen Jack. But this is not the right type of hand to be defending three-way against a half-pot bet. It's just not quite strong enough. You're going to find that there's lots of spots where you don't really know what to do on the turn, for example. Your decision is not going to be very straightforward. Okay, you might hit a 10 or a king, and you probably continue. But you're not going to be sure whether it's a good call on the river if you triple barrels. Also, another thing to keep in mind here is that we don't have a backdoor straight. We actually have a backdoor gut shot. So many of our outs that give us the straight draw, well, all of them, in fact, give us a gut shot. They don't give us an open-ender. And it's much more valuable to have a backdoor OESD. For example, if we had something like 10 Jack of Diamonds here, we have a hand that has the backdoor OESD, because if we pick up a Queen or we pick up an 8, we have an OESD. Whereas with King 10, if we pick up a 7 or we pick up a Jack, we actually have the backdoor gut shot, which is not going to be as valuable. So this call is basically just way too wide. I guess that's the first thing we need to write down. Or third thing, floating too wide, out of position, three-way. King 8 might be a 3-bet against cutoff min-raise. Could even call since he looks like a weaker player. But it's weak enough where it's not a huge problem if you fold. So King 10 of clubs, I don't think we have anything else to do on the turn. He checks back. Now you should be leading the river. The whole point of check calling the flop would be to lead the river, so at least the one redeeming factor of this hand is that you lead the river. Okay, I finally understand what your notepad is there for at the bottom. You're telling me this is a bluff. Okay. King 8, let's just see what you did do with that hand. I guess you 3-bet pre-flop. Yeah, he made it 70. I guess that's fine. I mean, he looks a bit fishy, although he does actually have 86% fold to 3-bet, so should be a clearly profitable 3-bet actually. We have to be a little bit careful when he calls actually, because if he does really fold this frequency to 3-bets, then he's going to have a reasonably strong range when he calls. He's going to have, broadways or a pocket pair at the very least. So for that reason, you'll probably find you should check fold the flop actually. Okay, you have the backdoor second nut flush and no backdoor straight potential. I guess we should check his fold to c-bet. And it is 100 actually. I mean, that's probably single raise parts. I don't know your HUD exactly. So I'd be a little bit worried his range is strong, but he has shown a tendency to fold to c-bet so far, so I'd say the hand's overall played fine. 6-4 suited is actually a fold against a cut of 3x. Queen 5 is actually a fold from the cutoff, but it wouldn't be a terrible open. 10s. Okay, you definitely want to defend 10s. Calling's fine. Might be able to 3-bet. But calling might be the best play actually. Yeah, I think it's something like Queen 7 suited plus from cutoff. I don't remember exactly, but I don't think Queen 5 is actually a cutoff open. I don't think it's a big deal though. So long as your cutoff raise first in frequency is not way far off from what it should be. If it's somewhere in the 26 to 28% region, that's fine. If you find your cutoff RFI is like 30%, then you need to analyze what kind of hands you're opening from the cutoff. I think nothing to do but check fold the 10s. He checks back. If he bets, it's a pretty straightforward check fold with the 3 overcards out there. Pocket 3s, we open raise, and probably fine to check fold this flop. I don't think we need to do too much here. Definitely check fold with the 10s. That's fine. Yeah, pretty easy check fold with the 3s as well. Aces, definitely going to open this one. King 6 is fold from UTG. Pocket 6s should be playable somehow. So just a standard open raise with the 6s. You should probably c-bet with the 6s, but it's a hand where you could check with some frequency, I would imagine. Yeah, just go for the triple barrel as played. Just bet, bet, bet on any river. There's no river where we can't extract value. There's no river where we should probably be checking or anything. Just bet, bet, bet with the 6s. Standard open with the King Jack of Diamonds. Hands on table 1 are all folds so far. Jack 4 on table 1 either fold, or you could 3-bet because the guy's got 100% fold to 3-bet. I'm not sure what the sample is. Keep in mind that you can 3-bet any 2 cards from the big blind if your opponent is folding enough to allow us to generate automatic profit. We have to be careful doing that kind of stuff from the button or the small blind, for example, because the silk guy is right behind us, so we don't necessarily want to 3-bet 3-deuce offsuit just because our opponent's folding 80% to 3-bets. But if you're in the big blind and you're facing an open and the guy folds above 70% to 3-bets, especially if you're playing fast forward, you should just be 3-betting any 2. I mean, there'll probably be some hands you flat, of course, but in terms of bluffs, any 2 cards is good enough. Okay, that was a terrible fold, I believe. Let me just go back. Table 2, let's just have a look at what happened here. I do believe you just folded Queen 5 to a small blind min raise. No, did you 3-bet? Okay, you folded. This is terrible, by the way. This is a really, really bad fold pre-flop. Basically, you should hardly be folding anything. In fact, I'm just going to bring up some ranges. I'll just show you. So you can see here a possible defending range, big blind versus small blind min raise. Just to tell you what the colors are. Light red, value 3-bet, dark red, bluff 3-bet. Cyan, or the light greeny color, is mixed strategy, so you can either 3-bet or call. So if you've got King 10 suited, for example, you should probably mix it up between the 2 lines. Calling's fine, 3-betting's fine. Dark blue is cold call. Now the hands in this greeny color towards the bottom, these are what I consider our optimal defense. They're probably not correct as part of a good poker strategy in terms of one that's close to theoretically optimal, but in terms of exploitative play, you'll find that when small blind min raises and we're in the big blind, there are plenty of spots when we can defend any 2 cards. It doesn't really matter what we hold. The reason for this is maybe opponent doesn't c-bet enough, maybe he check folds too much after he skips a c-bet, maybe he folds too much to flop raises, maybe he fires once and gives up. There's a whole bunch of things that players do wrong in this spot where our cards don't even matter. Like we could literally just play 2 blank cards here and we can generate automatic profit. So you may find that you don't want to fold anything against a min raise. But we don't have a hand like 8-deuce offsuit here. If you had that hand, then I wouldn't worry too much about this. But the idea here is you have something like Queen 5 suited. Now this is not even close as to whether it's a defend or not. It's like slap bang in the middle of the defending range. In other words, there's absolutely no way you can fold this hand against a min raise. It's a really bad fold. It's not like you just folded, 10-5 offsuit where you should probably defend, but you made a misclick or something, or you just decided not to defend that hand. That would be okay. I wouldn't care too much. I wouldn't care that much even if you folded something like 10-6 or 9-6 offsuit. But to fold Queen 5, now this suggests that you have a problem with your understanding of big blind cold calling strategies. So one of the things you need to check is you need to check your overall big blind cold calling stat, and you need to break it down into a few different positions. You need to have a look what you're defending against a small blind open, what you're defending against a small blind min raise. You could try different sizings, for example, but also what you defend from the big blind against other positions. So I don't know exactly where you're going to find problems, but unless this was a misclick, I wouldn't be surprised if you have some serious big blind cold calling problems. I mean, first step is just check your overall big blind cold call, and if it's less than about 26%, especially if it's below 20% or something, then you have some big problems with your strategy. So this is a really easy defend pre-flop. You can see it's actually in my 3-betting strategy according to the chart, but this guy is a weaker player. I would just call here. And this is another reason why you absolutely have to defend. This guy's probably not a very good player. He doesn't have a full stack. We're going to have position. We get a great price pre-flop. So for those reasons as well, this is a really bad pre-flop fold. Okay, so I'm just going to take a note. Big blind cold calling strategies. I guess take a note that folded suited Queen X to small blind min raise. Okay, let's continue. King's obviously going to open this hand. Table 1, you can just call if you want to. I mean, it looks a little bit ominous. It's almost 4x, right? So I'd be tempted to call with some frequency at least. I mean, you can do this. We can't say that it's wrong to 4-bet kings and stack off, but I think it's also fine when someone makes a huge 3-bet like this against UTG just to flat kings and play post-flop. I think that's reasonable. I'd say he has aces with a reasonable frequency here. Having said that, you should play for stacks now. So you should bet kind of small on the flop, and then you should ship the turn, and if he has aces, good for him. You see, the hope is now that he calls a full bet, hopefully he does have things like queens, jacks, and ace-king in his range. And then just ship the turn, and, good for him if he has aces. Which he may have with some frequency, for sure. People can slow play aces here. Yeah. And I think this is why I would just call pre-flop. I mean, obviously we don't want to be too results oriented. Okay, he had aces, maybe this is just one hand in his range, but it is actually going to be a very big part of his range. People don't necessarily bluff that much versus UTG. They're going to have things like aces and kings very frequently. And even if they do have a bluff with some frequency, 4-betting kings is not necessarily the best way to play against their bluffs, because you're just going to fold out their bluffs. I mean, that's still okay. If he's bluffing against us with something like ace-5 suited, he's going to have a good 30% equity against us, so it's still okay for us to 4-bet kings and fold out ace-5 suited. But the point is, we don't necessarily keep his range at the widest by 4-betting. He's going to fold a ton of hands to our 4-bet there, because, you know, we open raise UTG, he makes a huge 3-bet, and we still 4-bet against that. So he looks very strong, so we look even stronger. I mean, we're really repping aces in that spot, and we have kings, which is not super great. So I'm not saying it's minus EV the way you played the hand. I mean, it's certainly okay, and it's certainly fine to stack off pre-flop if he jams. But there's a chance that it might be slightly better in those kind of spots, just to call against the 3-bet. People are kind of nitty with their stack-off ranges at 10 NL. You know, you would think it was the opposite. You know, if you were new to poker, for example, you would assume probably that people at the lower limits stack off wider than people at the higher limits, because, you know, the people at the higher limits are more reasonable, they're better players, but it doesn't actually work like that. People at the lower limits are very nitty with their pre-flop stacking off ranges. You know, with a few exceptions. I mean, you get these guys who are on tilt shoving all in pre-flop, but if we ignore those for a minute, in general, people are stacking off a lot tighter in these games than they are stacking off, you know, the same games, like 100 NL party fast forward, people are stacking off a lot wider. So you have to be a little bit cautious even with kings. Now, we're not saying you fold kings pre-flop. We're just saying maybe you can play it in a slightly different way. You might maximize the EV that way. You've typed king never wins in the chat. Well, you have to really be aware of the situation. I mean, if it's a late position battle and that happens, then that's fine. You know, it's unlucky. His range is way wider than just aces. When a guy makes a 3-bet against your UTG Open that's almost 4x, now a big part of his range is going to be aces. You have to keep that in mind. You have to understand you are going to lose there with a pretty high frequency. It's not like slap bang get the money in because we have kings. It's like that in late position, but a little bit less so in early position. You know, I mean, you still got unlucky at the end of the day. I mean, you had kings, you had aces. That's pretty unlucky. We're not saying that you didn't get unlucky. I just want to see this ace-jack, so that's why I'm going back. So probably cold calling's fine with the ace-jack. I don't like squeezing that much just because it's UTG and MP, and also because MP doesn't have a full stack. I think calling's fine. Probably leading the flop might even be the best play. You get some fold equity that way as well. And you go for a raise against the min bet, which is fine. And you should probably just fire any turn. Probably just close your eyes and fire any turn. I can't think of too many turns you wouldn't fire, unless it was specifically a 9. That's like the worst possible turn. A 6, you should probably fire. This looks fine. River. River's a little bit tricky. It's probably a check on the river, and we just basically hope he has something like Queen King of Clubs, or, you know, any busted club draw. There aren't that many, I suppose. I mean, we block some of them. 7-8 of clubs obviously has a straight. The problem here is the guy looks a little bit fishy. Not sure if he's going to fold a pair on the river. I'm not sure if he's going to fold a 9 here. And we do have a very small measure of showdown value. We do beat 1 or 2 of his combos, so checking is not 0 EV or anything. I think you're good just to check fold here in this case. That's probably what I would do. He has a 9x. I really don't think he's necessarily folding. A reg might be able to lay down that hand as possible, but this guy, when I see a stack size, I think you're better off not bluffing against him. Six eight. I think you should probably defend this. Probably bottom of defending range, button versus cutoff. I would probably call. It's not a big deal to fold because it is the bottom of defending range. So I don't care too much if like you play some of the hands right at the bottom of the range or you don't play some of those. It's the ones where they're just obvious defense. Those are the ones that are problematic. I mean, it's not a big deal if you fold 8-6 of hearts there. Many players do. Okay, now I see you folding pretty fast in the small blind here. I'm just wondering, I guess where it says BB versus SB on your HUD, I guess that's your stat. We need to, because I'm seeing guys, for example, I don't know whether I'm misreading because it's going kind of fast, but I'm seeing guys who have 100% big blind fold to small blind still, and you're just auto folding pre-flop. So you want to be aware of that. Not sure exactly what the sample size was, but don't auto fold stuff in the small blind for sure. I mean, don't just look at your cards and then fold. In fact, if you're in the small blind, the most important thing is the big blind, assuming it gets folded around to us. That's the most important thing. So don't check your cards, check the big blind's fold, big blind to small blind still stat. That's what you should be doing. Don't just auto fold because you have 7 deuce offsuit. Not 100% sure if you're doing that, I'm just noticing that you're folding very quickly, and I'm wondering whether you actually had time to check the stat. Maybe you did, I don't know. But regardless of whether you did actually check, just keep that in mind. Most important thing in the small blind is how does the big blind play? It's not whether you have 6 deuce offsuit or whether you have pocket aces. I mean, some hands are going to be obvious opens, of course. If you have aces, you're going to open every time. That goes without saying. King 7, you must defend against a button min raise. This will be interesting because we get to test our theory from before. So yeah, I mean, you're not defending your big blind enough, basically. You have to defend King 7 offsuit there against a button min raise from the big blind. Plus, again, your opponent is a fish. And you want to be playing against fish. You should always keep that in mind. Never forget that fundamental rule. Where does our money come from in poker? It comes from the weaker players. You want to be going out of your way to play pots against the weaker players. And if you want to tighten up against the guys you perceive to be good regs, that's fine. But you can't give up golden opportunities to play like that against a fish. Even if you're out of position, even if you only have King 7 offsuit, you need to play in that spot. In fact, King 7 offsuit big blind against a button min raise is just a standard defend against a reg, even anyway. In fact, pretty much any ace, x, king x, queen x is going to be a defend. Probably any 2 suited cards is going to be a defend against a button min raise. In fact, I can probably find the ranges here. Just have a quick look. Here we go. Big blind versus button 2x. Alright, just have a quick look at that range. Maybe pause the video. Okay, there we go. That's the range. Okay, so don't fold any suited hands. Don't fold any ace, x, king x, or queen x. Okay, ace, king on table 2. Definitely going to 3-bet. Jacks, standard open. Looks good. Just cool against the 3-bet with the jacks. Don't do anything silly like 4-bet. Okay, now this is one of the spots that confuses people. There's a good chance the best play is to check fold the flop with jacks if you see bets, even though you have an overpair. He checks back though. Yeah, I mean, you played the hand fine, actually. They look completely fine to me. I don't think you can fire the river again. Seems okay. Ace tray is a fold. Alright, I don't think you have a good reason to be c-betting this combo on table 2. Let's just have a look. So your opponent looks a little bit fishy. You've got no information on his fold to c-bet so far. You just know he's playing 31-27. You completely missed the flop. You just have ace high. This is not a hand you want to be c-betting. It's a pretty straightforward check back. So I guess it's number 5. C-betting without good backdoor equity. I mean, again, have a look at your c-betting frequency and see what it looks like. Although you can only learn so much from that. No, you can't fold king 3 against 2.5x button. Again, let's just bring up the ranges for that spot. At least let me just double check. So, big blind versus button, 2.5x. You see, king 3. Okay, it was 2.6x, but you know, given that we're 3-bank suited queens and stuff, then you're still going to defend suited kings against 2.6, so just way too tight. You're not defending your big blind properly. I mean, have a look at your big blind win rate. See what it looks like. Remember, it should be better than, or at least equal to, minus 30 BB per 100. You know, if your big blind win rate's minus 40 BB per 100, then you're doing something terribly wrong. If you just go back here on table 1, okay, button min raises, we have queen 3 offsuit. This is going to be bottom of our defending range, roughly, against a min raise. It's not a fold. Okay, ace 10, standard cut of open. 6-7 of clubs, standard open as well. Okay, we flop top trips. Don't check the flop. Just triple barrel. I think sometimes people make a big mistake of checking flop here, but it's a really easy triple barrel. Okay, you check the flop. So basically what you're doing here is you're slow playing a hand that's worth 3 streets of value. Make it very difficult to get the payout you should get with this hand. And the main reason we slow play is if there's an additional incentive to slow play. And that might be, for example, our opponent bluffs turn and river if we check back the flop. But players don't do this at 10 and L fast forward. Basically, the only thing you're doing is giving a free card. You just need to come out betting on the flop there. It'd be much better to slow play like a really weak 10 or something. And you should probably still see bet a weak 10 at these limits specifically. But if you were going to slow play a 10, at least don't slow play ace 10. I mean, that doesn't make sense. You know, slow play like your worst possible 10 if you want to slow play some 10x. But don't slow play ace 10. Pocket 10s on table 1, you now need to be underbetting this turn. You want to be betting about 30. This guy beats us to it, though he leads. Queen Jack on table 2 is a pretty straightforward check back. Okay, now I know we talked about betting best miss c-bets before, but there are 1 or 2 exceptions. Anyway, he c-bets, and we spike second pair. We should call again on the turn. This is not a great spot to be in, and, well, at least the river makes it easy for us, put it this way. We now have a really straightforward river fold because the 4 straight gets there, the diamond flush completes, so at least our decision is easy now on the river. There's barely anything worth tanking about. It's a really straightforward fold. Um, 10-7 offsuit, not technically a button open. You know, things like Queen Deuce offsuit, you can also think about completing. By the way, with the Queen Jack, you can also think about 3-betting pre-flop with the Queen Jack of Hearts. Just find this range. Jack 10 and Ace 9 should both be playable, depends on the action, of course. So keep in mind that you can employ some kind of strategy. Oh, here's your notes, wrong window. We'll look at those shortly. You can employ this kind of strategy where light green is your 36% small blind RFI, dark blue is a completing range. Now you see Queen 2 is just outside that range, but keep in mind you don't have to auto-fold stuff like Queen 4. Especially if your opponent's a fish, you want to be completing stuff like Queen 4 offsuit. It's a very good exploitative strategy for low-limit games. 2s, checking back's fine. I mean, to be honest, I do actually c-bet pocket pairs on these kind of textures quite frequently. But definitely go for the delayed c-bet with 2s. Like, it's not even close. You have to bet here. No, it's a really, really bad check back on the turn. Just giving him free equity, giving him a chance to bluff the river. On the river, you should check back now. Like, don't bet the river, of course, now that you've got to the river with pocket 2s. So, it's really, really straightforward turn bet. You know, okay, he had a 4 in that case. But, you know, against this whole range, you should definitely be betting. It's more of a protection bet, really. Okay, so missing delayed c-bets. So delayed c-bets in these limits are automatic profit spots. So what that means is, basically, if you get the opportunity to fire a delayed c-bet in this game, you should probably take it. Whether it's for protection or bluff or for value, you should just delayed c-bet. So if I'm playing 10 and L fast forward, my delayed c-bet frequency is well up there. It's like 85% or so. I just delayed c-bet like crazy. It's very, very profitable. People don't adjust. I mean, the simple idea is by the time someone's checked twice, they don't have anything. So we want to be betting our weak hands for protection. We want to be bluffing a lot. And we want to be value betting just because, you know, we don't want to miss value. And it's true that our opponent's going to fold a lot in those spots. But that doesn't necessarily mean that checking is a higher EV because our opponent's not necessarily going to bluff the next street or anything. You know, that's exactly why you can't slow play stuff like Ace-10 on the 10-10X, because you don't get the incentive. Players are too passive at this limit to start bluffing turn and river aggressively. If they did do that, then slow playing would be a lot better, but players are passive. You have to go for value. You can't set traps as much in these games unless you have a very specific read. So ace, queen, and 8s both playable. 8s just a call, I think, against min raise from cutoff. Ace, queen, standard open. Okay, flop top set. It's nice. Obviously bet if everyone checks to you. If this guy bets, then you should raise. Definitely bet, don't slow play here, it'd be terrible, but I don't anticipate you slow playing here. I think most people would bet. It's just too drawy of a texture. Yep, standard folds. Okay. Seems okay with the nines. Take it down pre-flop. Yep. Folds on both tables. Don't think we can defend the king 5 against pot size. Pretty straightforward fold. Even if someone overcalled or cold called, I don't think I'd overcall that hand. Ace deuce, you must defend against some min raise. Surely you won't fold ace deuce offsuit. That would give us like an idea that the problem is larger than we suspected. But you know, the guy 3-bets, you have to fold in that case. But if the guy doesn't 3-bet, you must call against the min raise. Queen 5 is a fold. 3-4 suited is okay to open on the button. This guy opens. We should just fold against MP open there. See if we can just make this a little bit faster. Stop it if anything important happens. Okay, Jack deuce is a fold. But we've got Jack deuce on both tables. They're both fold. 6-8 MP. It's optional. Ace 10 standard open from MP. Ace 9 should be able to play this. Not against 4x, so folding's good. King 6. This is one of the hands you could complete if you had the opportunity, which you didn't. You just folded 10-7 in a small blind there. I'm not sure if I missed something. 8 tray is a fold. Ace king is playable. 3-bet's good. Yeah, looks fine. Okay, you flop pretty well. Should be c-betting this flop usually. Should be 2-barreling. I think it can be hard to triple. But we don't get the option to fire the turn. He just folds a flop. That's fine. Hand was very standard. Ace tray is a fold. Queen 8 could overcall. Probably is correct to overcall, but I think it'll probably be bottom of overcalling range in that specific spot, although opinions vary widely on that. There are certainly some players who would say that it's a pretty easy overcall. Ace 8, I would fold. King Queen should be playable. Definitely open raise, the King Queen. Ace tray. Okay, defend against a 3x. This is not actually defend against a 3x. It's a big difference whether someone min raises or whether they make it 3x. You clearly need to work on your big blind defending strategy. King Queen standard open, 7-6 standard open. You face a 3-bet on table 1. Okay, you can call. I mean, we're slightly deep. I mean, folding's also fine, actually. You could 4-bet, I guess, as well. It's not going to be a super profitable call or anything. It's going to be reasonable. Might be slightly better to fold at these games specifically. Queen Jack's a pretty good 3-betting hand. I mean, there's no way you can fold Queen Jack offsuit against a cutoff 2.3x. You have to defend. I'm not a big fan of calling. It's reasonable, but I think it's a bit better as a 3-bet actually in this spot. Yeah, you bet the flop. This is one of the spots where you don't want to bet 40 cents. You want to bet like 25 cents or something and encourage people to continue. There's not really a lot out there on that board texture. Plus, it's a 3-way pot, so you should be reducing your sizing anyway. So yeah, I don't think that's the best bet sizing in that spot. King 5 fold. Ace 7 offsuit is not a cutoff open. It's a button open, it's not a cutoff open. Definitely bet this flop. We'll see what the turn card is. Probably barrel the turn if it's safe. But yeah, you shouldn't be opening offsuit aces from the cutoff. Ace king, I'd probably just call in this spot. Check call a flop, although I guess you should technically check raise this combo with some frequency. Okay, well, I mean, you're deciding between the two, which is a good sign. It means you're aware of what your options are. Your cursor didn't go over the fold button at any point. I think you can probably just check this down. I mean, it's still going to be pretty close to river lead. It depends whether you think you can get him to fold pocket pairs. Also depends whether he'd ever like turn something like Queen King into a bluff, which would suck for us because I don't think we can really check call in this spot. So there's still an argument for leading. And you should lead probably most of your ace highs in that spot if you can fold out better ace highs. When you have the nut ace high, ace king, checking is at least going to be reasonable. Okay, ace 10. I just need to see what happened here with the ace 10 on table 1. So you call the min raise pre-flop, which is okay. You could also 3-bet some frequency. You have to lead the turn here. Checking sucks. So missing turn pro bets, basically. Let me just write that one on the list. So basically what you need to do is you need to go away and you need to watch my 2-part series on intermediate bluff spots and advanced bluff spots. Because what you're doing is you're not taking these automatic profit spots as you should be. You don't have a strong understanding of when you can generate automatic profit. Or at least your gameplay doesn't suggest that you do. Maybe you do, but you're not applying it correctly. I'm not sure. Maybe you're missing spots. I don't know the exact reason, but I do know what the problem is. We've missed a good pro bet spot. We've missed a good delayed C bet spot. There was something else we missed as well. Bet versus miss C bet on the flop, or flop float bet as it's sometimes called. So that's one of the things you need to go away and do. Watch that 2-part series. Tricky spot on table 2. You can either check fold or you can underbet. Underbet's fine, like a protection bet basically. I don't think you can value bet. No, you definitely can't bet half pot. That's ridiculous. Probably slightly better to check fold, maybe an underbet, but half pot, no way. You just value cutting yourself there all day. It's like a negative free roll. I don't think it's going to call with a worst 2 pair often enough. Whereas he's never going to fold a straight against that sizing. He might not fold a set. It's just not a good value bet with that sizing. It's too thin. I guess we should add bet sizing to the list, but the problem with adding bet sizing to the list is it's just such a broad and generic concept. Pretty much everyone needs to work on their bet sizing. But it's probably one of the hardest things to do, so just writing bet sizing on its own on the list is probably not that useful, but that is one of the things you should work on, your bet sizing. Don't bet this flop. It just doesn't make sense. The board texture is just very, very dry. Hand is not vulnerable. There's hardly any there's no overcards that can come. We've got the king covered. It doesn't make sense to bet. Okay, very often you should bet versus miss C bets. We've talked about that, but that's one of the spots where you don't bet versus miss C bets because your hand is distinctly non-vulnerable. There's no value in a bet there. I mean, I'm not sure what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to get a value from pocket jacks? It's not going to happen. Maybe you get value from a worst queen, but you don't have 3 streets against a worst queen, so there's no value in betting the flop. You're not missing value if you check the flop. Then again, you could be slow rolling us with trip aces or something, and now we're just burning money. So, yeah, okay, let's recap everything. Just going to bring the notes up on the screen now. Alright, these are the problems. Okay, now let me just highlight a few of these things. Missing bet versus miss C bet on the flop, sometimes called as a flop float bet. Missing delayed C bets. Missing turn pro bets. Okay, so the stuff in yellow, I guess what you need to do is go and watch the videos intermediate bluffing spots, I think it's called. I'm sure you'll find it. And advanced bluffing spots. Okay, so these are problems that you can solve somewhat quickly if you've got a spare hour to watch 2 videos. Maybe you've seen them already, and if you have, well done, but you're just not applying the things correctly. Okay, there's some weird stuff going on with c-betting and barreling. So you missed a second barrel with the nut flush draw. Doesn't make any sense, just really, really basic stuff. If you have the nut flush draw, you should probably double barrel. And, you know, I guess you could say this kind of applies to the same kind of area. C-betting without good backdoor equity. Okay, so I think there are some videos on the site on c-betting. There's certainly an article series I wrote called Advanced C-betting. I mean, that might help with the c-betting side of things. So to Advanced C-betting 3-part article series at PokerVIP.com. Maybe that would help. I think it touches on turn barrels because the idea is the way we formulate our flop c-betting strategy will be based on our turn strategy, our turn plan. In other words, we don't really know which are correct hands to c-bet on the flop until we think about what may happen on the turn and river. In other words, understanding when to second barrel is fundamental to understanding whether you should c-bet the flop in the first place. So, although this doesn't talk directly about turn barrels, maybe it'll help you think about some of the fundamentals of turn barreling as well. Okay, big blind. Alright, let's do this in a different color. Just misunderstanding of pre-flop defense, basically. So we saw 3 problems, and maybe there are a couple more, I'm not sure. So folded Queen X to a small blind min raise. It was a suited Queen X, actually. Really, really bad fold. Missing defense. You missed a King X offsuit, big blind versus button min raise. And you missed King 3 suited versus button 2.5x. So keep in mind that the sizing is important. Don't just use the same defending strategy against 3 big blinds or against 2 big blinds. There's a pretty big difference, actually, between how you defend in those spots. I mean, let me just show you what I'm talking about. Let's just take one spot, big blind versus button. Okay, this is big blind versus button 3x. Okay, light red value, dark red bluff, dark blue cold call. This is big blind versus button 2.5x. This is big blind versus button 2x. Okay, you can see there's a big difference between if someone makes it 3x or they make it 2x. You need to be aware of these things, and we need to see this incorporated in your strategy. The most obvious problem we've identified is you're just under defending, especially against small sizings. Big blind versus button 2x, hardly folding anything. And we also saw big blind versus small blind 2x. There's an argument for defending any 2 cards here. There's definitely not an argument for folding Queen 5 suited in pretty much any spot. Okay, so we also saw a missed King 3 suited versus button 2.5x. It was actually 2.6x if you want to be specific, but it was still a defend. Okay, so you need to work on your big blind, basically big blind defense. Now as for resources, I think there's a video on this. Just one sec. There is one article I've just checked. I think we probably need more videos on this topic, actually, so maybe I'll make a video on pre-flop big blind defense. Actually, it's just made me realize that maybe there isn't a super great resource for this. There's certainly some resources. Some of them are a little bit dated. There's one resource which is called Modern Blind Defense, but I think we definitely need another video on this. So this is an article. I mean, so at least check this out. That will start you off. Okay, bet sizing, you know, this is just so generic that, I mean, there probably are resources you can look for. I'm not going to give you anything directly for this, just because it's just a very, very broad generic topic, and it's probably one of the hardest areas in No Limit Hold'em. Floating 2 white, out of position 3-way. Yeah, I guess maybe a good one would to be have a look at the video on multi-way pots for this one. That would probably make the most sense. Because I think if you're check call floating very wide in a multi-way situation, that's going to stem from a fundamental misunderstanding of the idea that players don't really bet super aggressively 3-way. They don't like to bluff into 2 guys. So their betting range is going to be a lot more value heavy, which means that trying to check call float stuff like King 10 high is going to get into a lot of trouble. So maybe watch the video on multi-way pots. You'll also see there's another option there which we should frequently use in multi-way pots, which is not to check call at all, but actually to incorporate a somewhat aggressive leading range in those situations. You can represent a stronger range. We no longer isolate ourselves against our opponent's stronger part of his range by letting him c-bet. I think there are some videos on bet sizing. I mean, there's definitely a video I made on bet sizing. So actually maybe you could check that out. So number 5. Let's put bet sizing video. I think the video is actually just called bet sizing. Not 100% sure. I'll just fire it up and see.
Hi guys, this is Weasel.
Yeah, it's actually just called bet sizing. Alright. So I guess you can start off with this just as an introduction to the concept. Okay, so as usual with these video reviews, you know, I've really focused on the bad things, so don't assume that everything's terrible. It's not. It's just that we're both here to find out what you're doing wrong as opposed to what you're doing right. You know, there's a lot of stuff you're doing correctly. There was some hands that were played decently, so don't think that everything's bad about your game. It's very simply that we've only focused on the stuff that's problematic, because That's going to be what's most useful for you, basically. So don't think that I'm like tearing apart your game or anything. There are some very good things in there. Many of the hands were played correctly. These are the things that didn't go well. These are the things you need to work on. So for each of the problems, there's a resource. All of these resources are at PokerVIP, so you just need to run a search. Check out the written articles, check out the videos. In fact, let me just make this clear. So multi-way pots, this is a video. Bet sizing, this is a video. Blind defense, that's a written article. Advanced c-betting is, I put 2-part series, it's a 3-part series, article series. And then these two here, these videos. So just work through these in order. And by the time you're done, then you should have a slightly stronger game with a few less leaks. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to message me on Skype. I think you might be on my Skype anyway, I'm not sure. If not, feel free to add me and send me any message. And yeah, thanks very much for your video. Good luck at the tables. I will see you around on the forums.